We begin the Gemara today at the bottom of Samachayim at base, 2 lines from the bottom of the Yamud. The Gemara here brings a brayso in connection to what it said in the beginning of the Mishnah. The Metzia Seisha. A woman finds something, who gets it? It goes to the husband. So here the Gemara brings a machlokes about this in a brayso. Tana Kamei Rava. A Tana taught in front of Rava, Metzia Seisha la'atzma. The Tana of this brayso says a woman finds something, she can keep it for herself. Rabbi Kiva says labayla. She has to give it to her husband, like it said in our Mishnah. Amalei, so Rabbi said to this Tana that taught this brayso in front of him, Hashta, how could you say that this is Rabbi Kiva's opinion? Hashta now, if when it comes to the surplus of the work that she does for her husband. This is something we spoke about earlier in the Masechta a few times, that there's the minimum amount of the work that she does that belongs to her husband, instead of the fact that he feeds her, so she gives him her income. But then there's the surplus, more than that amount that she has to give him. So regarding this surplus, who gets the surplus? So Amar Rabbi Kiva says la'atzma, that she can keep it for herself, even though it's part of her income, and the income in general goes to the husband. So you would think that the surplus also belongs together with the general income, but nevertheless she can keep it. Mitziyasa, so something that she found for herself, it's not even part of her income b'chlal. Like kol shekain, most definitely you should say that she can keep it for herself. How could we say here in this brayso, Rabbi Kiva says that it goes to the husband? And the Gemara brings the source of Rabbi Kiva's opinion. We had this before already. It says in the Mishnah, a person makes a neder. This is a woman that makes a neder. Whatever I'm going to earn, should not, the husband can't have any benefit of this. So the Tana Kamei says, the husband does not have to nullify this vow because it never took effect. She doesn't have the power to take away from the husband the income that belongs to him. Rabbi Kiva says, Yafer, that the husband does have to nullify this vow. It does take effect. Why? Maybe her income will be more than that amount that she has to give him. And on that amount, that extra, the neder will take effect. So he has to nullify this vow. Right, so we see over here, the Tana Kamei and that Mishnah held that even the extra from the income still goes to the husband. So she can't make the vow at all. But Rabbi Kiva is saying, no, the hadafa, the extra of the income, she can keep for herself. So that's the Gemara's question. If she keeps the extra of her income, for sure, mitzia, that has no connection to what she earned, it's not connected to her income, which is instead of the mezainis, for sure she should be able to keep. Hello, so the Gemara says, you're right, Eipach, we have to switch the opinions in the brayso we quoted before. Mitzia seisha lebayla. The Tana Kamei is the one that says that if she finds something, it goes to her husband. Rabbi Kiva says la'atzma, that she keeps it for herself. But it still doesn't fit, because when Ravin came, so he explained the pshat of this Mishnah that we just quoted regarding the vow. So Amar Rabbi Yechanan, he said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, if she's earning extra money and she didn't have to exert herself, it wasn't with extra hard work, but it came easy, she had a surplus to her income. That kind of income that she makes extra, but it comes easy, everybody will agree that it goes to the husband. Kipligi, when is there an argument between the Tanaim and the Mishnah, Rabbi Kiva, whether the surplus goes to the husband or not? When she's working extra and she's pushing herself, she's working extra hours, she's working on night shift. So then the question is, because she's taking more of her time to push herself to work more, does that also go to the husband? Tana Kamei Savar Labayla. The Tana Kamei says that it still goes to the husband, and Rabbi Kiva Savar La'atzma, and Rabbi Kiva says it goes to herself. So what's the Gemara's question? So Rashi explains, at this point the Gemara is thinking, when a person finds a mitzia, the woman, when she finds a mitzia, so what should we compare this to? To a woman that's working hard, extra, and investing in this extra effort, and therefore this would be something that there's a machlokes about whether this goes to the husband or not. No, Rashi says simply a mitzia is something where a person does not invest extra effort for, and therefore we said that everybody agrees that that for sure goes to the husband. So how can we say that there's an argument in the brayso regarding a mitzia whether it goes to the husband or she can keep it? Answers the Gemara. Rav Papa explains, Mitziyasa kahadafa she'al yedei adchak tami. Actually, a woman that finds something, it's not compared to something that she earns without effort, but this is compared to extra earning that comes with an effort, with an extra effort. Rashi here says, Roiv Mitzias, that a person finds. So yeah, that is Takad, is the famous Gemara that a person comes upon a Mitzia Behesach without expecting it, but nevertheless, most valuable things that a person finds is the person was looking for it. Rashi says, for example, you come by the riverbank, you find that something nice over there, something good, something valuable. You dug in the ground and you found something valuable. Most valuable mitzvahs that you find does come with a certain extra effort, and therefore it is compared to ha'adafish ha'idei. And therefore, plukta the Rabbi Akiva v'Rabbanan. So therefore, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbanan argue regarding a mitzvah, just like Rabbi Yochanan said, they argue regarding an extra income which came with an extra effort. A mitzvah falls into that category as well, and that's their machlokes here. Rav Papa asks a question: how exactly do we define this when we say that if she works extra, there's a machlokes if it goes to the husband or not? So Rav Papa asked, what's with a woman that's able to do two jobs at the same time? Mahu. What do I say then? Does the extra income of the second job that she's doing together, also, are we going to say that it's the same machlokes here if it goes to the husband or not? I'll explain this in a second. First, the Gemara continues, Ravina asked, Shloisha, Idalad v'vasachas, if she's doing 3 or 4 jobs at the same time, Mahu, what's going to be the halacha then? So Rashi gives an example. Let's say she's watching a field of cucumbers, and she's taking care, and at the same time that she's watching there, she could also sit and weave and make a garment, and at the same time, Rashi says she could be teaching women how to sing. For she's being hired to teach them how to melamed as shir, and at the same time she has eggs in her lap and she's warming the eggs. So she's doing 4 jobs at the same time. So before we spoke about Al Yidei Chak, when she's taking maybe extra hours, she's working a night shift. So with that we know it's Al Yidei Chak. But the question is over here, if she's doing these things at the same time, do I consider this to be Al Yidei Chak because she's doing so many things at once? Or no, because she's not taking extra hours, she's able to do it all at the same time, so it's not Al Yidei Chak. That's Teikro, so the Gemara does not resolve this question. Continuing in the Gemara, Baishto Pagama. So in the Mishnah, it said Baishto Pagama, so there was a machlekes in the Mishnah. The Gemara is going to focus on Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseida's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseida says that when a wife is embarrassed, part of the payment goes to the husband. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseida said it actually depends. If she was embarrassed in a place which was concealed, so then the husband only gets 1/3 of this payment for the embarrassment. If she got embarrassed in a way that it was exposed for everyone to see, the husband gets 2/3 of this payment. So based on this opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseida, if you embarrass your friend's horse, so too are you going to say the that you have to pay the person for the embarrassment of the horse? So the Gemara is asking, if you're saying that you have to pay the husband for the embarrassment of the wife, so if so, say the same thing regarding a horse. So the Gemara asks, what kind of a question is this? Is the horse someone that gets embarrassed? How could you even ask such a question? The Rishonim actually struggle with this question of the Gemara. Taisus himself over here says Taimah. The whole question of the Gemara is a Taimah because the Mishnah itself didn't say that all of the payment of the embarrassment goes to the husband. It said there's a percent that goes to her, a percent that goes to the husband. Obviously, that's not shaykh by a horse. So how could the Gemara even think to compare this to a horse that got embarrassed? Taisus does not give an answer. One of the pshatim that it says in the Shittim Mekebetzes is that the Gemara is asking regarding this that Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseida said that when she gets embarrassed in a place which is concealed, and therefore this is something that the husband himself has absolutely no embarrassment of this, and nevertheless the husband is getting paid for a baishas beseisa. So the Gemara is asking, so in the reverse, if a person embarrasses the horse and there's absolutely no embarrassment to the horse, are you going to say that there's a payment for this? Obviously not, because the horse didn't get embarrassed at all. So the Gemara means to ask on Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseida, and how about when the husband didn't get embarrassed at all because it was an embarrassment beseisa? So why is he getting even a percent of this payment? That's really what the Gemara was asking, and the Gemara is answering no, but by a horse, the horse itself is not shaykh b'chal to get embarrassed at all. Mashenkin by the isha, because she's a human being that gets embarrassed, so it's shaykh to say that the husband gets a percent of this payment. But the Gemara continues and asks, Ela rakak b'bigdei shel chaveireh. What's the halach of a person spits at the garments of your friend? So the hachanami, the boy lemitten leboishes. Are you going to say over here as well that the halacha is going to be that you have to pay the person for this embarrassment? Right? So over here, the garments that he's wearing the garments, so it affects him. He gets embarrassed by this. So are you going to say that he has to get paid for this? Just like when a person's wife gets embarrassed, so it affects you as well. The husband gets embarrassed by this as well. So if so, the halacha should be if you spit at a person's garment that affects you, you get embarrassed by this, so you should get paid for this. So if you'll argue and say, yeah, true, from our Mishnah we see that should be the din. But Vatanan, we learned in Baba Kama over there when it discusses these halachas of Baishis, it says, boy, if you spit at someone and the spit reaches the body of the person, or you remove the head covering of a woman, you remove someone's garment from him, then you have to pay for this embarrassment. But so now, Rav Papa explained the pshat of that Mishnah. That's only if you spit at him and it came on his body. If you spit at a person's garment, potter. So then you're going to be potter. So why, when it comes to a wife, do you say that it affects you and therefore you get paid for this? But by a garment, we say that you're potter. And says the Gemara, big doi, less lazy lusa. The garment itself is not human. There has to be a human component to the actual garment itself. The garment itself is not a human being. Ishtoi is lazy lusa. The woman herself, she gets embarrassed. If the actual embarrassment is to a human being, so then I say that the payment is not only to the human being that got embarrassed, but it's also to the husband that got embarrassed along with her. But when you get to a beged, because the beged itself is not human, I'm not going to say that because the beged got embarrassed, so therefore the person that got embarrassed along with the beged gets paid. That so far we don't go. Ravina asks Rav Ashi another question based on what we said in our Mishnah, that a husband gets embarrassed by his wife, so he gets a portion of the payment. So Elamativ, so biish ani ben toivim, if you embarrassed a poor individual that's part of a beautiful, nice family, so the isluzi lusa lekula b'nei mishpacha. So all of the people of the family get embarrassed by the fact that this poor person of this family got embarrassed. So you're going to have to pay for this embarrassment not only to the person himself but to everybody else. You just said that as long as the one that got embarrassed is a human being, so then the others that got embarrassed along with her and by the wife, so the husband has to get paid. So over here, the family members got embarrassed along with this ani that they embarrassed. Mm-hmm. Taisus actually points out, the Gemara here says, Ani ben Taidim. How about if it's a rich individual that's part of a family? Why does the Gemara say Dafka and Ani? So Taisus says, the Gemara understands that stam embarrassing one family member is not a reason to pay all the other family members. But when you have a rich person, so he could defend himself. So the fact that he's getting embarrassed, that's not connected to the rest of the family. But you have a Ani, and he can't defend himself. And the rest of the family has to come to his defense. Over here, the Gemara is asking that if you embarrass this ani, that the rest of the family should get paid for this. Malay, so the Gemara answers, a wife is different. Hasam lav gufayu. The rest of the family members are not one, they're not like the same body, they're not one with all the other family members. Hacha ishtoi gufei havoi. A person's wife is like his own body, so if she's embarrassed, this is mamish almost like a direct embarrassment to the husband himself, and that's why the husband gets paid. But there's no such a thing as ever paying for an embarrassment of someone else that then indirectly embarrassed you. There's no such a thing. It has to be a direct embarrassment to you, and that's the case by a wife. A father-in-law or a future father-in-law set an amount of money that he's going to give for a son-in-law for the chasana. Now, before the full marriage, so there was the edison, but before the full marriage, the son-in-law passed away. So what happens now? That amount that he set to give for son-in-law, so now they didn't have children, so there's a mitzvah of yibum. The brother has to get married to his daughter. So what's the halacha? So the Chachamim say, the father-in-law could say, for your brother, I wanted to give this amount of money, but for you, I'm not interested in giving this amount of money. So the obligation does not carry over to the brother. Zok the Mishnah Vaita. Here, the Mishnah will discuss various different things that a woman brings into the marriage, right? It's a dowry, or whether she brings in cash into the marriage, money, or she's bringing in valuables, the different valuable items into the marriage. And what happens? It's written into the Kesubos exactly the amount of money and the amount of valuables that she brought in. And if she gets divorced or she becomes an almana, so then she gets them back. So here the Mishnah will tell us a unique halacha of how this is written into the Kesubos, how this is evaluated, and how exactly it's written into the Kesubos. So the Mishnah, Paska lahachnis loy 11 dinner. She says she's bringing into the marriage 1,000 dinner. 1,000 dinner is 10 mana. Every 100 dinner is 1 mana. So this is 10 mana. So now, how is this written into the Kesubos? We don't write into the Kesubos that she brought into the marriage 1,000 dinner. We actually write more. Who paisik kenegdon? He's going to write into the Kesubos 15 mana. That she brought into the marriage 15 mana. Okay, which is a third more than what she actually brought in. What's the reason for this? That Rashi brings, and the source of this is actually the Yerushalmi here that explains that because the money he gets from her while he's married to her, he's allowed to use it. He can invest with it immediately. So therefore, it's even though right now it's 1,000 mana, 1,000 dinner that is, which is 10 mana, but nevertheless, really it's more valuable for him. For this cash is something that you can invest. So therefore, it has an extra third of value, and therefore, if she gets divorced from him, she's going to get a third more than what she brought in. And the interesting point, the Mefarshim actually explain, you might think that this is ribis. She brought in this amount, and then later when it comes to a get, he would have to give her more, a third more than what she brought in. But the Mefarshim explained, no, this is not ribis, because ribis, the idea of ribis is this week's parasha, ribis. The idea of ribis is the fact that I'm allowing you to keep my money for a certain amount of time, which is called aganatar. The fact that I'm waiting for the money that you have and pay me back later. That's what the idea of ribis is. You're not allowed to give an interest for the money that you can keep for a certain amount of time. Over here, though, the fact that he has to pay her more is not because of any waiting. Even if he divorces her right away, you would have to give her this extra amount. There's nothing to do with that. The fact that she brought in money, which is available for him to invest right away to make money, he has to pay her right away this extra amount. So this is not ribis at all. Okay, so this is all when he's bringing in money. So this is something that you can invest, so you have to pay her extra. Now, keneged hashom, if there are valuables that she brings into the marriage, and the valuables that she brought in were evaluated for what their value is, hu paisik, when he writes into the Kesubos the valuables that she brought in, he actually deduct from its value a fifth. So, for example, what we brought before, if she brought in 1,000 dinner, so then you'll deduct a fifth, which would mean you'd write into the Kesubos that it's only worth 800 dinner. What's the reason for this? So Rashi explains the reason is because when they would evaluate the valuables that a woman brought into the marriage by the chasana, they would evaluate this to impress the husband. They would inflate the value, so he should be impressed by what his wife brought in. So therefore, what you actually write into the Kesubos, you write the accurate amount, which is going to be a fifth less. But the Mishnah continues. Shum b'mana v'shaveh mana. But if she brings in something that was evaluated, has a value of a mana, and it's actually worth a mana, they did not inflate the value, so then ein lo yela mana. So then you only write into the Kesubos that it was a mana, as its accurate value is. Shum b'mana. But in a usual situation, when they do inflate the value of it, so if it was a mana, and again, like I said before, a mana is 100 dinner, so then hine senes, so she's going to have to add. She's going to have to add more than the value that was written into the Kesubos. She has to add another fifth more. Shleishim ve'echad sela vid-dinner. She's going to have to add 31 sela and a dinner, which comes out to be 125 dinner. Every sela is 4 dinner. Yeah, 4. Okay? Every sela is 4 dinner. So therefore, if you take 31 slayim and a dinner, so 31 slayim is 124 dinarim. With another dinner, that's 125 dinner. Again, so the point over here is that in the Kesubos, you write the value of 100, but then she has to bring in that an amount of value that when they're going to evaluate it, and they're inflating the value, it's going to have to be a fifth more, 125. Uba'arba meis, if he wrote into the Kesubos that she's bringing in 400, hinisenes chamish meis. She has to bring enough valuables that when they're going to evaluate and inflate the value, they're going to say the value is 500. The Mishnah continues, masha chasam paisik. If the chasam, if this is the chasam is writing into the Kesubos, meaning that if it was already evaluated before, it was evaluated before he wrote into the Kesubos. Till here, the last 2 cases the Mishnah was speaking about, that the chasam wrote a certain amount that she's bringing into the Kesubos. He already wrote it, and afterwards she's going to bring the value of what he already wrote. So she has to add a fifth. But now the Mishnah is speaking about if what happened over here is the reverse, that she already brought in the valuables, and the chassan already evaluated it, and now the chassan is writing into the Kesubos what it is that she brought in. Hu paisik pachas chaimish. So he writes, like we said before, a fifth less of what he actually evaluated. So we learned in the Braisa. So going back to the first case in the Mishnah, regarding a husband that passed away, and now the father-in-law says, I don't want to give this nad and this dowry that I promised for the brother as well. I didn't want to give this amount. So, needless to say, Rishon Talmud Chacham, the first husband was a Talmud Chacham, V'sheni Amaretz, and the brother is an Amaretz. So then, of course, the father-in-law could say, I don't want to give this money for an Amaretz. Alafil Rishon Amaretz, even if the first husband was an Amaretz, V'sheni Talmud Chacham. The second husband is a Talmud Chacham. So how could the father-in-law renege on his responsibility? He could still say, for your brother, I agreed to give this amount. For you, I do not agree to give this amount. In the simple pshat of the Gemara, it seems like what the Gemara is saying is, it doesn't make a difference. You can't come and make any cheshbainis for him, yet Talmud Chacham, not Talmud Chacham. I made an agreement for one individual, and that agreement does not hold for someone else. But the Meiri adds the pshat in the Gemara, the very fact that the Gemara is bringing up Talmud Chacham Amaretz, you can see from the Gemara that the status of the person does matter. And therefore the Meiri says the pshat of the Gemara is because an Amaretz could be an individual that has better midas tavis than the person that's a Talmud Chacham. And that's the reason why he could say that for this person, I don't want to give because he doesn't have the same midas tavis as his brother, even though the brother was an Amaretz. Then the Mishnah said, Pascal Hachnes loy elef dinner, the halacha of when she brings in valuables and the value is inflated, so you write into the Kesubos a fifth less. So the Gemara focuses, if you look in the Mishnah we just read, there's so many different variables that the Mishnah is saying. The Mishnah seems to be repeating the same thing again and again. If you write in 100 in the Kesubos, so then she has to bring in 125, 400, 500, and then it says if the chassan already wrote into, if the chassan evaluated it higher, so then why does the Mishnah keep on repeating itself? We already said once the point in the beginning that you have to write a fifth less. Why is the Mishnah saying these different cases again and again? And says the Gemara, there's two chidushim the Mishnah is saying here. First of all, Tane Shumerabe. Again, Tane Shumerabe. For Mishnah is giving you an example of something which has a high value, and the Katani Shumezutta. And the Mishnah is giving you an example of a case where there is something which has a low value. And as Rashi explains, the chiddush over here is that on one hand you might think that when you have a Shumer Rabba, when there's a wife that's bringing into the marriage something that has a lot of valuables that have a big value, over here it's more of the derech to inflate this value because it's taka impressive. So therefore you inflate this value. So maybe you would say that this whole idea of writing into the Kesubos a fifth less is only when there's a lot of valuables that have a big value. But maybe if it's not if it's something, she's anyways bringing in something petty over there, you don't have to deduct a fifth from this value. But then there's also a svara to say the opposite. A wife that's bringing in very little valuables because it's so small, so therefore you want to impress the husband, so at least you try to inflate the value of these few valuables. So maybe you'd say, dafka over there you have to inflate, the value was inflated, so you have to deduct a fifth from what you write into the Kesubos. That's one chiddush. Another chiddush is, Tana Shumedidei. The Mishnah gives you the example of Shumedidei, that this is actually the last case of the Mishnah, where the husband first evaluated all the valuables that she brought in, and then he writes into the Kesubos a fifth less of what he evaluated. That's the last case. And then Katani Shumedida. The Mishnah also tells you the case where the husband first wrote into the Kesubos a certain amount, and after he writes the amount, she now has to go and bring in a fifth more of what he wrote because the value will be inflated. So therefore it says both of these cases, whether it was evaluated before he wrote it into the Kesubos or after he wrote it into the Kesubos.
What does this make it besides Shas? Shas is a big thing.
Sagt der Heilige Mishnah, Pascal, Hachnes Lois. This is actually another detail, going back to what we learned in the Mishnah before, that when she brings in cash, you have to, the husband has to add to the value that she brought in a third. So Pascal, Hachnes like Sofim, she's bringing in money into the marriage. Sila, if it's a sela, every sela, as we said before, is 4 dinarim. So Nasa Shisha dinarim. So you have to add a third to that, and you have to write to the Kesubos that she brought in 6 dinar. HaChassan, now besides this, another thing that the Chassan accepts upon himself to provide for his wife, HaChassan Mekabel of Asara Dinarim L'Kupa. So the Chassan has to give 10 dinar for a kupa, for a fund for his wife, L'chol Mana Mana. Every mana, which is 100 dinar, 10%. 10 dinar he has to put aside for a fund for his wife. What is this for? So the Gemara will explain. Rab Shimon Gamliel says, there's no set amount that he has to put aside. Hakel k'minhag Medina. It goes according to the custom in that country. So the Gemara, the first case of the Mishnah, when it spoke about the fact that you have to add to the money that you brought into the marriage, this is continuing from the previous Mishnah. We already said this point, that he has to add a third to the money she brings in. So hainu paisa kenegdam chamisha asamana. This is the same point we said before. When she brought in 10 mana, that you have to add a third, and you have to give 15 mana, right into the Kesubos 15 mana. Why are we giving another example over here when she brings a sela, that you add another 2 dinarim? So the Gemara gives a similar answer to what it said before. Tane is gerabe, v'tane is gezute. It gives you a scenario, a case where there's a lot of money that she brought into the marriage, and he can invest a lot. And it gives you a case where she brought in a little amount of money and he could invest very little. And the Gemara explains the difference. But tzricha, and I need to say in both cases that he has to add a third to this amount. If it would say the case, which brings a lot of money, which was the previous Mishnah, the nafish revacha. So this is taka, a lot of money you could invest. You could have a lot of profit. So maybe here is where you have to add a third. But if she brings in very little money and you invest, you'll make very little profit. The zutta revacha, there's very little profit. Here you don't have to add a third to the money she brought in. Tzricha, therefore, this Mishnah is saying, even if it's a little amount of money. In the reverse, via shmina and iske zutta, if we would only say that you brought in a little bit of money, that you have to add a third, so I would say maybe the zutta ziyuna. Over here, there's less of a responsibility, or some Rishonim say it means there's less of a risk. This is a kind of investment which is a smaller amount of money, it's more safe of an investment, so therefore in such a case, you have to add a third for this investment. But if she brings in a lot of money, the nafish ziyuna, true, she's bringing you in so much money and you have the opportunity to invest, but it's also a big headache and a responsibility and could even be a big risk. So maybe for this, you don't have to add a third to this money she brought in. So therefore, maybe not. Tzricha, therefore the Mishnah has to say also the case regarding when she brings in a lot of money into the marriage. And the Mishnah said, Achasan mekabel olav asara dinner lekupa. There's a fund that you have to put aside 10% from what she brought into the marriage that he has to give her to provide her. What is this for? My kupa. What is this kupa? This money that you put aside for her. Ravashi explains, kupa shel besamim. This is to put aside for her what she needs for besamim, for perfumes and things like that a woman needs. Ravashi says, Leinemru dvarim alalu ela b'Yerushalayim. This thing here that you provide for a wife, the besamim, is only in Yerushalayim. There the minig was that they would use the besamim, so you have to put it aside for the wife. Ravashi asked about this Mishnah, so it says that it's 10%. According to the Tanakama, for 1 maneh, so it's 10 dinarim. How do you evaluate this 10%? B'maneh hanishum, do you evaluate the 10% by what the money was actually evaluated to be? Or b'mana meskabel, or by the amount of the way it was written into the Kesubos. Into the Kesubos you add another third to this money. So maybe the 10% goes by what you actually write into the Kesubos. The Gemara asks weiter, if you're going to say that it's the money, the way it was written into the Kesubos. So now there's another question regarding this money. Taisus really explains that the following questions that the Gemara is going to ask is lav dafke, if you say mona meskabel, even if you would say mona hanishum, the same questions apply. But the question over here is this 10% that he has to give his wife. So do I say yoim rishain, on the first day after they get married, he has to give her that full 10% right away for whatever she needs. Oi call yoim v'yoim, or every single day you have to give her a little bit for what she needs for that day, up to till you come to the 10%, and then later on you're going to have to give her for whatever she needs in a different way. But right now, the 10% that you're giving her, you don't give her the entire 10% all at once. You give her every day a little bit of that 10% of what she needs daily. Now, even when you say that you have to give her daily, you could still ask, for how long do you have to give her daily? If you're going to say that you have to give her daily the amount of that day from the 10%, do I say Shabbos Rishayna? The first week, so then you give her 1 day at a time from this amount that you have to give her. But then after that first week that you're giving her on a daily basis, whatever remainder there is from that 10%, you give it to her fully, and she has it all at once. Call Shabbos for Shabbos. Or it's every single week, you continue afterwards, also every single week, you give her the amount for that week. If you're going to say that you give her for every single week the amount for that week separately, not all at once, so do I say that this is only Chodesh Rishon, the first month of the marriage, you give her the percent for each week separately, and then after the first week, or first month that is, you give her the rest? Every single month of the year, you give for that month what she needs for that month. If you're going to say that you give for every month of the year what she needs for that month, Shana Rishayna, this is only in the first year of marriage. and then after the first year of marriage, whatever is the remainder from this 10%, you give her the whole rest of the 10% all at once. I call shana b'shana, every single year according to the amount that she needs for that year. Peiku, the Gemara does not resolve this ibaya. I explained the Gemara here according to Tosfos. There are other pshatim in the Gemara, but this is how Tosfos learns this ibaya here. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Maise bebita shel Nagdim ben Gurion. There was a story with the daughter of Nagdim ben Gurion, which we spoke about earlier in the Gemara, which was an extremely wealthy individual. Shepaskal Chachamim, when Chachamim came to set aside this money for this kuppah that she needed for her fragrance, for the besamim, how much money was it? Arba meiz zuhuvim lekuppah shel besamim, 400 golden coins for this kuppah for besamim that she needed. In other words, the percent of what she brought into the marriage was so high. L'bay bayayim for that day. Amr alahem. So she said to the Chachamim, Kach tifsiku livnei seichem, that you should also be so wealthy that you should be able to set aside for your daughters this high amount of money. And the Chachamim answered Amen to her bracha. If you remember before, she gave a bracha, and the Chachamim did not answer Amen. Over there, we're speaking about a case that her husband passed away, and she was a Yavam. But over here, a Yavama. Over here, they answered Amen to her bracha. Now we learned in the Braisa. So this is a sad story that happened with this daughter. So the story was with Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai. He was riding on a donkey. He was going out of Yerushalayim. His students were following him. He notices a girl. She was collecting barleys from the dung, from the animals, from Arabs. She had nothing to eat, and that's where she had to go and find for herself some food. So this girl saw Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai coming out, nis'atfa beside her, she covered her face with her hair. And she stood in front of him and she said, she said to Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai, Rabbi, my Rebbe, parnaseini, feed me. Amar, so Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai tells her, Biti, my daughter, Miyat, who are you? Amar, she says to him, Bas Nagdim ben Gurion ani. I am the daughter of the famous, wealthy individual Nagdim ben Gurion. So he says to her, Biti, my daughter, what happened to all the money from your father? She answered him, Rebbe, my Rebbe, isn't there the analogy, the mashal that people say in Yerushalayim, and they say the following saying, Melach mamin, if you want your money to be salted, which means to preserve the money, that you should keep it, chesed, you have to give away, by giving tzedakah. That's how you salt your money. So basically she's saying, my father didn't give enough tzedakah. There's another version of this saying, chesed. You want your money to be salted, do chesed. So then your money will be yours. So that's what happened. So he asked her, the money that you got from your father-in-law, where did that money go to? It was all written into the Kesubos as well. So what happened to that money? She said, because the money of my father and the money of my father-in-law all got mixed together, so one brought the other money to get lost as well. She said to Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai, Rabbi, my Rebbe, Zacharata, do you remember when you signed my Kesubah? So do you remember how much money there was there? So he turns to his students and he says, yeah, Zacharani, I remember when I signed the Kesubah of this girl, for you see, I read in the Kesubah was Elef Alafim Dinrei Zav Mi Beisavia. There's thousands and thousands of golden dinarim from her father. Chutz Mishal Chamia, besides the money that she got from her father-in-law. Bach Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai, and Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai cried, Vamar, and he said, Ashreichem Yisrael, fortunate are you Yidden. When you fulfill Hashem's will, no nation in the world could have any power over you. If you don't do Hashem's will, Hashem gives you over into the hands of a lone nation, into the hands of the Arabs. We're speaking about it here. Rashi says the Arabs are a lone nation, they live in tents out in the desert. And not only the hands of this lone nation, like it was with this girl that she was looking for her barley by the dung of animals. The Mashal actually points out when Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai said Ashreichem Yisrael, he wasn't only saying that the Yidden are fortunate when they're Eisen at Tzayne Shalmakayim, but this is also the Yidden are fortunate even when they're not Eisen at Tzayne Shalmakayim, because this is part of the special connection that Yidden have to the Eibishter. Those, the goyim of the world, that don't have that special connection. So just like they don't get a special hashpah from the Eibishter, so too when they don't listen to Hashem, so there's also no special consequence from this. But because he didn't have a special connection, the Alter Rebbe and Tanya explains this, that the goyim that get their hashpah from Chitzonius, so when they do an Aveda, it doesn't necessarily affect that Ashpah that they get from a level of Chitzonius. But Yidden that get a Ashpah from Pnimius, from a deeper place, so when a Yid does an Aveda, it cuts off the Yaakov Chevel Nachlasei, and therefore it affects the level of who Yidden are. So the Ashreichem goes on both, because it expresses the true special connection Yidden have to the Eibishter. That's the story that happened there. But now the Gemara asks on this, let's just finish this inyan. Is this true that Nagdim ben Gurion did not give tzedakah? His daughter was saying that my father, his money wasn't preserved because he didn't give tzedakah. But Vatanya, we learned, it was said about Nagdim ben Gurion, the Beis HaMedrash, when he walked out from his house to the Beis HaMedrash, he was so rich, they would spread out these expensive garments, or the expensive, like a carpet, for him to walk on it. And then poor people would come, and they would fold it up, and after he walked on it, and they would take it for themselves. So this was one of the things of tzedakah that he gave. So we find that he did give tzedakah for poor people. So how was his money not preserved? And it says the Gemara, either the answer is he did all of this for his own honor. So therefore, he wasn't zeicha that his money should be preserved. This answer is a big chiddush here. The Marsha says that we know there's the famous Gemara that says a person that gives tzedakah manash yichya b'ni, a person that gives tzedakah shaloi l'shma. The Gemara says that it's manash ben olam haba. It's a mitzvah and he's a tzaddik gomer. The Gemara says the expression. But the Marsha says, but if a person is doing it l'chvaydai, just for the attention and the honor, apparently it's worse than a person that's doing it to be a ben olam haba or a manash yichya b'ni. That's what you see over here. This is one answer. Another answer is, according to what he was able to give, he did not give. As people say, according to the strength of the camel, that's the weight of the package that you could place on it. So he didn't give according to what he was able to give. This expression of the Gemara, I think you could say, there was Mamish Margele B'Pumi. The Rebbe used to always mention this in letters and in Sichos. The person thinks that he's doing perfect and enough. A person has to evaluate himself if it's Kedaboy Leila Mevet. Well, there's a famous word on this Gemara. The Hafla says, this word the Gemara says that you want to preserve your money, you give tzedakah. So the Hafla says that really the Teva Ha'olam is, as it says in the Gemara, that the riches is kegalgal achayzer. That it's like a wheel that turns, a wheel of fortune that turns. Sometimes a person is rich and then later on he becomes poor. So if you want to preserve your money, it's really hepech hateva. The only way that you can preserve your money is when a person gives tzedakah, and as it says over here in the Gemara, to give tzedakah with the proper amount, with the proper kavana, and then it's going to accomplish something hepech hateva. Otherwise, the teva is that a person will not keep his money by him. It's not a psa'oinish. Adarabah, the fact that he could keep his money, that's a big schos hepech hateva through giving tzedakah kedabai.
So what happened to him?